The Syrian conflict has become a crucible of geopolitical competition, with global and regional powers vying for influence amidst the ruins. The war, which began in 2011, has drawn in numerous countries, each with its own strategic interests and objectives. The devastation has been immense, with cities reduced to rubble and millions of lives disrupted. While the civil war has abated from its peak intensity, the struggle for Syria's future remains as contested as ever. Various factions continue to vie for control, and the international community remains deeply divided on the best path forward. The humanitarian crisis persists, with countless Syrians still in need of aid and support. A striking development in recent years has been the deepening alignment between Russia and China in their support for the Syrian regime of Bashar al-Assad. This partnership has grown stronger as both nations seek to counterbalance Western influence in the region. Their cooperation extends beyond mere political support, encompassing military, economic, and diplomatic dimensions. This burgeoning partnership has significant implications for the balance of power in the Middle East and beyond. By working together, Russia and China aim to reshape the regional order to better align with their strategic interests. This alliance also serves as a counterweight to the influence of the United States and its allies. Russia's military intervention in 2015 proved decisive in turning the tide of the war in Assad's favor. The deployment of Russian air power and ground forces provided critical support to the Syrian government, allowing it to reclaim significant territory from opposition groups. Moscow's aerial bombardment campaign, coupled with the deployment of ground troops and military advisors, effectively bolstered the Syrian army and its allies. This intervention not only secured Assad's position but also reinforced Russia's status as a key power broker in the Middle East. China, while initially more circumspect in its involvement, has steadily increased its engagement in recent years. Beijing's strategy has been more measured, focusing on long-term economic and diplomatic investments rather than direct military intervention. Beijing's approach has been characterized by a focus on economic statecraft and diplomatic maneuvering. Through initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative, China aims to integrate Syria into its broader vision of connectivity and development across Asia, Europe, and Africa. This convergence of interest between Moscow and Beijing is driven by a confluence of factors. Both nations share a desire to challenge the existing international order and to promote a multipolar world where their influence is more pronounced. Both countries view the U.S.'s role in the Middle East with suspicion, seeing Washington's interventions as destabilizing and detrimental to their own interests. They are united in their opposition to what they perceive as American hegemony and are determined to assert their own influence in the region. For Russia, Syria represents an opportunity to project power in the Mediterranean and secure its naval base in Tartus. This strategic foothold allows Moscow to maintain a significant military presence in the region, enhancing its ability to influence regional dynamics. China, on the other hand, sees Syria as a key node in its Belt and Road Initiative, a trillion-dollar infrastructure project aimed at connecting Asia, Europe, and Africa. By investing in Syria's reconstruction, Beijing hopes to secure economic and strategic benefits that will extend far beyond the Middle East. The growing Sino-Russian axis in Syria presents a formidable challenge to the United States and its allies. This alliance not only complicates Western efforts to influence the outcome of the Syrian conflict, but also signals a broader shift in global power dynamics. It underscores the shifting dynamics of the global order, where the traditional dominance of the West is being challenged by rising powers like China and resurgent ones like Russia. This realignment has far-reaching implications for international relations and the future of global governance. As the Syrian conflict continues to simmer, the interplay between these external actors will continue to shape the country's fate. The outcome of this geopolitical struggle will not only determine Syria's future, but also influence the broader regional and global landscape for years to come. While Russia's military might has been instrumental in propping up the Assad regime, China has adopted a different, albeit complementary, approach. Beijing's strategy in Syria is characterized by a long-term vision focused on economic reconstruction and diplomatic engagement. China sees Syria as a vital link in its ambitious Belt and Road Initiative, and its investments in the country's infrastructure are seen as a way to expand its economic and political influence in the region. China's reconstruction efforts in Syria encompass a wide range of sectors, including energy, transportation, and telecommunications. Chinese companies are involved in rebuilding roads, bridges, and power plants, laying the groundwork for Syria's economic recovery. This economic statecraft serves a dual purpose. It helps to stabilize the war-torn country while also creating opportunities for Chinese businesses. Russia's military presence, on the other hand, remains the most visible manifestation of its support for the Assad regime. Moscow's airbase in Hamaymim and its naval facility in Tartus provide Russia with a strategic foothold in the eastern Mediterranean. Russia has also deployed private military contractors, such as the Wagner Group, to bolster Assad's forces and protect its own assets in the country. The combination of China's economic investments and Russia's military backing has created a formidable axis of support for the Assad regime. This partnership has enabled Assad to regain control over much of the country and consolidate his grip on power. However, the long-term viability of this alliance remains to be seen as Syria's complex political landscape and the competing interests of external actors continue to pose challenges. The United Arab Emirates, UAE, a key U.S. ally in the Middle East, has taken a different tack in its approach to Syria. This shift marks a significant departure from its earlier stance, reflecting the complex and evolving geopolitical landscape of the region. After initially supporting the opposition to Assad, the UAE has shifted its stance in recent years, opting for a more pragmatic approach. This change is driven by a recognition of the realities on the ground and the need to adapt to new circumstances. Abu Dhabi sees the Assad regime as a reality that cannot be ignored and believes that engaging with Damascus is essential to counter the growing influence of Iran in Syria. This strategic move is aimed at curbing Tehran's reach and ensuring regional stability. The UAE's rapprochement with Syria has manifested in several ways. This includes diplomatic engagements, economic cooperation, and humanitarian efforts, all aimed at rebuilding trust and fostering a new era of bilateral relations. In 2018, the UAE reopened its embassy in Damascus, signaling a thaw in relations. This move was a clear indication of Abu Dhabi's intent to re-establish formal ties and play a more active role in Syria's future. Since then, high-level diplomatic visits have become more frequent, and economic ties between the two countries have been gradually restored. These interactions have paved the way for potential investments and collaborative projects aimed at Syria's reconstruction. The UAE has also provided humanitarian aid to Syria, further bolstering its image as a regional power seeking to stabilize the war-torn country. These efforts have included medical supplies, food aid, and support for rebuilding infrastructure. The United States, on the other hand, has maintained a more hawkish stance towards the Assad regime. Washington's approach is characterized by a firm stance on sanctions and a call for political change. Washington continues to impose sanctions on Syria and has called for Assad's departure as part of any political solution to the conflict. These measures are intended to pressure the regime and support opposition forces. However, the U.S.'s influence in Syria has diminished in recent years as Russia and Iran have consolidated their hold on the country. This shift has altered the balance of power and complicated the U.S.'s strategic objectives in the region. The diverging approaches of the UAE and the U.S. reflect the evolving dynamics of the Middle East. While the UAE seeks engagement and pragmatism, the U.S. continues to emphasize pressure and isolation. While the U.S. remains a major military power in the region, its political clout has waned and its allies are increasingly charting their own course. This trend is indicative of a broader shift in regional alliances and strategies. The UAE's outreach to Syria is a prime example of this trend, as Abu Dhabi seeks to protect its own interests in a rapidly changing regional order. This approach underscores the UAE's desire to be a key player in shaping the future of the Middle East. Israel, which shares a border with Syria on the Golan Heights, has watched the evolving situation in its northern neighbor with deep concern. The region has been a flashpoint for decades, and recent developments have only heightened the sense of urgency in Jerusalem. The Syrian civil war, with its attendant chaos and influx of foreign fighters, has exacerbated Israel's security concerns. The conflict has drawn in various militant groups, each with its own agenda, further complicating the security landscape. A particular worry to Jerusalem is the presence of Iranian-backed forces, including Hezbollah, near its border. These groups have been bolstered by the chaos in Syria, allowing them to establish a foothold dangerously close to Israeli territory. Israel has long viewed Iran as its arch-nemesis, and the prospect of Tehran establishing a permanent military presence in Syria is anathema to Israeli security planners. The strategic implications of such a development are profound, potentially altering the balance of power in the region. To counter this threat, Israel has carried out hundreds of airstrikes inside Syria, targeting Iranian weapons convoys, military installations, and personnel. These preemptive strikes are aimed at disrupting the supply lines and operational capabilities of Iranian-backed forces. These strikes, while officially unacknowledged, underscore Israel's determination to prevent Iran from entrenching itself militarily in Syria. The operations are meticulously planned to minimize collateral damage while achieving strategic objectives. The evolving geopolitical landscape in Syria presents both challenges and opportunities for Israel. The shifting alliances and rivalries in the region require constant vigilance and adaptability from Israeli strategists. On the one hand, the growing influence of Russia and China complicates Israel's ability to operate freely in Syrian airspace. Both nations have vested interests in the region, and their military presence adds layers of complexity to Israel's operational planning. Moscow's deployment of advanced air defense systems such as the S-400 has restricted Israel's freedom of action. These systems are capable of tracking and potentially neutralizing Israeli aircraft, posing a significant challenge to Israel's air superiority. On the other hand, the U.S.'s waning influence in the region has led to a tacit understanding between Israel and Russia, allowing Jerusalem to continue its strikes against Iranian targets in Syria with a degree of tacit Russian acquiescence. This delicate balance requires careful diplomatic maneuvering. Israel's strategy in Syria is characterized by a delicate balancing act. The country must navigate the complex interplay of regional and global powers while safeguarding its own security interests. Jerusalem seeks to prevent Iran from consolidating its military presence in Syria while avoiding a direct confrontation with Russia. This requires a nuanced approach, balancing military action with diplomatic engagement. This requires maintaining close coordination with Moscow even as Israel continues to push back against Iranian entrenchment. Regular military talks and strategic dialogues are essential to avoid misunderstandings and potential conflicts. The success of this strategy will depend on Israel's ability to navigate the complex web of alliances and rivalries that define the Syrian conflict. The region's volatile nature demands a flexible and adaptive approach, ensuring that Israel can respond effectively to emerging threats and opportunities.